And welcome back to Luxuries Outdated. Now, as you may have noticed, we've had no videos for the last couple of weeks. Had a couple of family things going on. As if you saw the last video, actually, I had a baby. Oh well, I didn't have a baby boy. My wife did. I have a baby son, Will. So I have a daughter, Cara, and my son, Will. So all is great. No sleep, obviously, in the last couple of weeks. But anyway, when I was briefly out in between helping feeding and nappies and what have you, I was at a local charity shop, and now in Ireland, for various legal reasons, charity shops aren't allowed to sell electronics anymore. It's to do with a recycling fund thing, and it's a couple of things, but basically they're officially not allowed to sell electronics. But occasionally they do, just for whatever reason. And a local one, let's see if I can show you this here. The local one beside me, which is literally like a minute down the road, had this. Which I got for €4, and see if you can see that there. It's a lovely picture of some kids playing Mario Brothers with no joypads plugged in for some reason. It's a Famiclone. For those of you that don't know what a Famiclone is, it's basically a completely unlicensed fake NES. It's got a little circuit board in there with a thing called a Nintendo on a chip. A bit like the Commodore 64 little joystick things. It's the same idea, but it's completely unlicensed. They started kind of cropping up in the mid to late 80s. In Russia, there was one called Dendy, I think, that was fairly popular. Bear in mind that in a lot of the regions that you buy these in, that they were a lot cheaper, a hell of a lot cheaper than the NES, which mightn't have ever been released in that country anyway, because Nintendo basically hate everyone who isn't American, Japan, really. So and be a hell of a lot cheaper. It's based design-wise, as you're going to see in a minute, on the Famicom. So instead of being the NES, which is just like the worst piece of engineering ever, it's based on the original Famicom, the Japanese Nintendo system. So I'm going to crack that open in a second, and we're going to have a quick look at what's there. And I might show you one or two things. There's lots of games built in. Again, this is the whole thing. It's a pirate copy of a Nintendo, and therefore has a load of games built into it. But we'll fire this up, and I'll show you the way it works, and we'll go from there. So how interesting this next bit is really depends on whether you've seen a Famicom before or not. Famiclone. As you can see, it's basically, and I always thought the Famicom was a much better design machine than the NES. Hang on, let's have a look here. There's little side bits here for the controllers to slide into, which makes it much neater. There's an eject button there for the cartridges go in. Reset button, on off switch. Now this one came with two controllers. As you can see, very similar to the basic design is similar to an NES one. I don't know if you can see it there. Let's take one out and show you. Actually, I won't. It's basically a 9-pin connector, the same as the Mega Drive and the Master System, Commodore 64, the whole works. I tried, just out of curiosity, I tried a Master System converter, or Master System controller with it, and it's wired differently. So it does, I think it was picking up right as fire and up as left or something like that. So in theory you could rewire one to do it, but it's not much point. Back when I was a nipper, a friend of mine had a machine that it was just referred to as the Texet, Texet. They're a crowd now that make label printers and things like that. But they had, or subsidiary or side version or whatever, one of them had brought out one of these Famiclones. Looked very similar to this. I think the controllers were wired into it. It basically was my introduction to Nintendo games, because bear in mind, in Europe, up until the end of the 80s, early 90s, the NES, I can't remember, it was either horribly expensive or just not released. Just from memory, I can't remember. I think it was released late, and it was insanely expensive. They didn't bother competing, which is again why I always find it very odd that with the whole 8-bit consoles thing, you know, most websites, the US ones, refer to the Master System as a failure, and the Nintendo was a huge success, because in Europe, the Nintendo just they didn't bother marketing it. They kind of went, oh, there it is, there's a couple of games, a bit late, you know, running unoptimized for PAL, and insanely expensive. There you go. And it was only when the Super Nintendo came out that they actually seemed to put any effort into, you know, Europe. And again, they still, you know, games came out late, unoptimized, really expensive. So, but I mean, anyway, sorry, I'm waffling wildly here. But the whole point of this is, I wouldn't have actually seen an NES. I would have seen one of these before I saw an NES. But I'm going to fire this up. I'm going to switch over to emulated in a minute. Now, again, if you've ever seen one of these Famiclones, they always have games built in. And this one uses Contra as the... Now, it says 168 in 1. It's not, okay? You've got... if you look there, you've got Fire Contra. I don't know if you can read this. Up the top, Fire Contra, Spin Contra, Bomber Contra, Flame Contra. Basically what you generally find is you've got maybe 20 games on these. And then about 30 variants where they've changed one graphic. Let's see if I can show you. Now, some of them are actually, you know, I've often enjoyed them. Like, I don't think it's on this, but I remember one of the ones that my friend had Lunar Pool on it, which is a great game. Like, for example, Variant Brother, oh no, Jumping Mario. Oh, there's the instructions. Sadly, even though it's got some of the graphics from, yeah, even though it says Mario Brothers, or, you know, Super Mario Brothers 2, it's, oh, hang on, you can't really see it, but yeah, a couple of the graphics are slightly different. It says 2 there, but it's not. Yeah, there you go, the bottom is a bit, oh, look, it's got the Bomberman thing. I'm doing this one-handed, by the way, so, you know, it's kind of hard to control Mario, because I'm doing this one-handed and looking through the viewfinder. So I'm going to switch to emulation in a minute. I just want to, yeah, generally, I mean, like I said, you'll get 20 games and they'll all be variants on real games. One thing though, you get this adapter with it. Now, as far as I can see, if I had US Nintendo games, NES games, they would actually run on this. It doesn't seem to recognise PAL ones. But if you ever seen the... I did a response to someone ages ago that were saying, what would you use in your collection to kill zombies or something, or a zombie invasion? And I was saying that a really crappy Famiclone. Now, it was much later. It was a later one than this. Back when, you know, when the lawyers kind of obviously came in a bit, and they stopped putting just pirate copies of games built into it, and they just, you know, came up with, they changed them enough so they're rubbish and that they're, you know, unrecognisable from the original. But this is the cartridge that came with it, so it's a Famicom cartridge. There you go, you get a lot of really crappy loading. Oh my god. Oh, hang on, I haven't seen this before. Is this Silkworm? No, I think it's Silkworm with the graphics changed. Again, folks, one-handed. Doing this one-handed. That's what she said. Yeah, I think this is actually Silkworm, but with the graphics significantly changed. Must have a look at that again. Anyway, the one thing of interest, I'm going to switch to emulation in a minute for this, so you can actually see it properly rather than my horrible shaky cam. My favourite thing about the original Famiclones, like the ones that had original games on them, is that obviously, like, when you're putting, you know, a lot of pirated games onto your pirated copy of a Nintendo, any legality goes out the window. Now, what that means is you get this. Now, hang on. Again, folks, one-handed. It's going to be my excuse for everything that I get wrong here. This Tetris 2 isn't Tetris 2. It is, in fact, Tengen Tetris. Now, I'm going to switch to emulation and show you this, okay? Because it's a bit of history to it. Okay, so see you in a second. so I'm not going to bore you too much with the details. We're going to have a quick look at the original Tetris first, the official version of Tetris. I'm not going to bore you with the story, but there's a great BBC documentary called, I think it's something like From Russia Would Love the Tetris Story, or From Tetris Would Love the Russia Story. I don't know, but it's Tetris Love Russia, all in there somewhere. It basically goes through all the legalese things about the various, about how Tetris was created, and it explains why, in a nutshell, there was two versions of Tetris on the NES. There was one which was created by Bulletproof Software, which is the one you see here, and then there was the one created by Tengen, which they briefly had the rights to make, but then they didn't, but then they did, but they had them for the arcade, and anyway, you get it in a minute. I think this version is terrible. The emulator, by the way, is making it look even worse than it is, in fairness, but it's just, this is the version that everyone goes nuts over, on the NES, and it's, when you compare it to the Tengen version, it's just terrible. The controls are just horrible as well. I'm so used to the Tengen version where you press the button to turn the piece and you push down to drop, whereas in this one it's reversed, so that's, nothing much is happening there. But you've got you've got some little pretty enough graphics around the side, no animation for dropping, and no, there's one version of the game and that's it. It's just bog standard Tetris, and if you've got a mate and he wants to play, then he has to wait because it's single player only. So we're going to have a look at the Tengen version now, and you're going to be seriously impressed. Okay, so this is the Tengen version, aka Tetris 2, aka Tetris the Soviet mind game, depending on where you've played it from and what you've seen. There are a couple of technical problems. This is actually the third time I've recorded this, so I'm gonna hopefully it'll look a lot better than the previous little clip did. But yeah, first of all, look. It looks a bit better straight away, and if you can see there, we've got 5 options. We've got 1 player, we've got 2 player versus, we've got cooperative, we've got computer versus, and I forget the other one, computer cooperative, I think. So, lots of different musics, and there you go. Look, straight away, graphics are much better. It's based, there was an arcade game, a Tengen arcade game, which technically makes it an Atari arcade game, and this is where the kind of graphical style came from. In fact, I think it was done by Ed Logg, who did lots of my favourite games, like and so on. I don't know how much joy can be derived from watching someone play Tetris. But I played, like I said, I had to scrap the last recording, which is a pity because I was playing like a legend. I was just getting Tetris's four lines in a row all the time, whereas now, yeah, a bit pitiful. If you have a look there on the right, you're seeing there's some. It just gives you statistics. I think there's a way of showing a little Tetris man that jumps around, but I can't remember how. Maybe it's on a different version. Again, because I'm playing this on a pirated console, it's possible that it might be slightly different from the original. But as far as I know, there was some key command you could do that would get a little guy jumping around there. We'll just get the 6 lines and then we'll try something else. Oh, there we go. Okay, well, I'm just going to show you a couple of the modes in this. As I said, I couldn't get over back, years ago. I didn't know any better. I thought this was just Tetris 2, the sequel, and then I heard that there was a version, about the whole Tengen thing, and the minute version that was released, and then there was the official one, and I assumed that this was the official one because it's the most polished, best looking, whereas the other one looks like someone's computer science project. It's just the game's there, but it's pretty basic. And it was years later I found that this is the one that was recalled. It was on the market for I think a month officially. Now I don't know, like I said, I never saw a copy of it in the wild. But as I mentioned back then, NES games, even unlicensed ones that weren't paying loads of money to Nintendo, were still pretty pricey. And in my neck of the woods, it was still 8-bit computers back then. But if you were looking for a copy of this, it crops up on eBay occasionally. It's not crazy, but it's pricey enough. I found if you actually want to play this, the cheapest thing to do is keep an eye out for Famiclones. They'll usually say what the games are in the back, and the newer ones, the ones that they've obviously been in Tesco actually, believe it or not. But like I said, the newer ones are like, if you saw the cartridge we showed earlier on. Here, we'll try. Let's try a different version here. We'll you saw the version I had at the start of it where I plugged the cartridge in. Most of them are like very, very heavily edited NES games. But if you find an older Famiclone, usually at a car boot sale or charity shop or maybe eBay, it'll usually have something like, it'll usually have a copy of this on it. It cropped up on an awful lot of them. As I mentioned, there's the Russian Dendy ones, or the Texas one I had experience playing that as a kid. But they're out there anyway. And there's one on Amazon, I think it was like 84 in one, and it looked like an N64, and I think it has a copy of this, but I could be completely wrong, so obviously, check out review. There's the one I was looking at before, I mentioned the reviews, it mentioned the list of games in the reviews, so it'll list it there. So, there you go. I don't know how much fun, again, you can have from watching someone just drop bricks down. This is the cooperative version. Now I'm playing with the computer, because it's very sad I don't play with her at the moment. And the computer is a bit clueless, so you're playing as much against the computer as you are when you're playing Versus, if you follow me. But, folks, that is Tengen Tetris, and that's Famiclone, the Family Computer 168, with the magical kids who can play Mario without having controllers plugged in on the cover. Well worth checking out. Again, Famiclones, especially the old ones, well worth seeing if you can get them. At the very least, they're usually cool designs, well, rip-offs of someone else's designs. But there you go, Tengen Tetris. I may come back and look at some of the other games on this that are built into this later on. I'm actually, a friend of mine's getting me some Famicom games, so they may hopefully work with it, so I can show you them. But anyway, listen, this has been Luxury Dated. Thanks for watching. It's good to be back, and see you next time.